Try not to drop anything, sweetheart. Leave the real soldier work to us. The laughter that followed was sharp, dismissive, and meant to stick. Jenna Locke didn't answer. She just kept moving, her eyes steady, her hands precise. Minutes later, the laughter died. 4 seconds, only 4 seconds between life and death. A sharp metallic clink cut through the air, a live grenade bouncing in the pit. Shouts erupted, boots scrambled, soldiers hit the ground. But she didn't run. Jenna surged forward, each step measured, hand closing around the grenade mid-bounce. Her thumb clamped the spoon, the other hand slid the pin back in. Silence swallowed the range. In that single breathless moment, the entire base stopped to watch her. The midday sun blazed down over the training range, baking the earth into a cracked, dust-strewn stage. Heat shimmered above the concrete blast walls, and every breath tasted of grit. For the recruits lined up in formation, it was supposed to be a lesson in respect, for the weapon in their hands and for the uniform they wore. But for one airman at the edge of the pit, the morning had become something else entirely. Airman First Class Jenna Locke rolled a heavy trolley stacked with live grenades across the uneven dirt. Her boots pressed deliberate tracks into the sand, her hands gripping the metal handle with unshakable steadiness. Behind her, a cluster of young soldiers snickered. Their laughter cut through the dry air like small, mocking blades. "Don't trip, sweetheart. Wouldn't want you to make a real mess of things. Careful. Those are heavier than the paperwork you're used to." The jeers weren't loud enough to attract the attention of their drill sergeant, but loud enough to sting if she let them. Jenna didn't flinch. She didn't even glance in their direction. Her eyes stayed forward, her breathing controlled, each step measured. If the insults landed, they found no purchase. To the recruits, she was invisible, just a logistics clerk, a supply runner pushed into the wrong corner of the base, someone to laugh at, not someone to learn from. They saw the rank on her chest, not the precision in her movements. They saw her hands gripping a trolley, not the quiet discipline in her spine. But above them, in the steel-framed observation tower, another set of eyes noticed what they missed. Colonel Marcus Hale leaned forward on the railing, his expression tightening as he tracked her movements. He had seen hundreds of clerks and support staff shuffle through training sites over the years, heads bowed, arms awkward, feet dragging. Jenna Locke moved differently. Her posture was centered, coiled. Each step flowed into the next with the kind of balance you didn't pick up from pushing paper or filling inventory logs. She maneuvered the trolley across the uneven dirt without wasted effort, her head turning in precise arcs to map the space around her. It wasn't nervous scanning. It was the calm sweep of someone who had trained to calculate every angle, every threat. Hale narrowed his eyes. To him, she looked less like a clerk moving munitions, and more like a predator in disguise, an apex animal cloaked in the wrong uniform. He knew that look. He'd seen it before, on night patrols and in briefing rooms where lives depended on the steadiness of a single hand. And yet here she was, silent under the weight of jeers. The military, for all its discipline, carried a stubborn culture of judgment. Too often, value was tied to patches on a shoulder or the volume of a voice, not the substance of quiet actions. Support staff, cooks, medics, clerks, and ammo runners were invisible until something went wrong. They carried the lifeblood of operations, yet they rarely carried the respect. It's a flaw not unique to the armed forces. In workplaces everywhere, the ones who move quietly in the background are often mistaken for unimportant. We notice the loudest speaker in the room, but we rarely notice the one who makes sure the whole room is standing. Respect for many is only given when noise demands it, rarely when silence embodies it. Locke was a perfect embodiment of this contradiction. Every ounce of her composure screamed experience, but no one cared to look closely enough to see it. Not yet. What none of them could see was the weight of where she'd been. The sun on her face was nothing compared to the furnace heat of deserts where she had walked patrols in silence. The grit in her throat was nothing compared to the acrid dust of crumbled walls where she had bent low over untriggered bombs. She had been here before, in another place, another uniform, under another name whispered on encrypted comms. Her body knew what to do, even if those around her thought she was just the kid from the depot. Locke herself offered no explanation. Her silence wasn't shyness. It wasn't timidity. It was the practiced calm of someone who had already lived through things that would hollow out the laughter of these recruits. She had nothing to prove to them. She knew that sooner or later, truth reveals itself, not in words, but in the moment when everything is stripped down to instinct. The heat, the dust, the laughter. It all formed a picture of a woman out of place. But in Colonel Hale's eyes, she wasn't out of place at all. She was simply a shadow waiting for the right light to reveal its shape. And when it did, everything on that range, the arrogance, the assumptions, the cheap jokes, would be obliterated in less time than it takes for a grenade to tick down from 4 to 0. The recruits lined up in the blazing sun, sweat dripping into their eyes, uniforms already stained with dust. A thick silence hung over the pit until Sergeant Damon Cross broke it with the bark of his voice. He was a man who thrived on a volume and sarcasm, wearing his authority like armor. "Listen up, ladies," he snapped, holding up a grenade between his thumb and forefinger as if it were nothing more than a paperweight. "This isn't a toy. This is an M67 fragmentation grenade. 5-meter kill radius, 15-meter casualty radius. In other words, drop it, and you're not the only one going home in a box." He let the words hang for effect, scanning the nervous faces before him. Then with a smirk, he added, "Treat it with respect. Something a few of you could learn, especially our supply runners." The glance he threw toward Jenna Locke didn't need words. The recruits caught the cue, snickering again. Cross loved to lace his instruction with barbs. It wasn't enough for him to teach. He had to remind everyone of the pecking order. The first recruit stepped forward, hands trembling slightly as he accepted the grenade. Cross paced like a wolf behind him. "Pull the pin like you're opening a soda can," he said mockingly. "Don't overthink it. Even you can manage that." The soldier did as told, pulling the pin, throwing the grenade into the designated pit. A dull thud, then the earth shook with a thunderous crack. Dust plumed skyward. The young man flinched harder than the blast itself, but he had survived his first live throw. Cross chuckled at his fear. "Not bad, Private. You only looked like you were about to wet yourself." The line moved. One by one, soldiers stepped forward, repeating the ritual. Pin, throw, explosion. Each one looked terrified, but Cross's voice, part drill, part insult, pushed them along. By the time the seventh soldier approached, the tension had doubled. This one was younger, smaller, with eyes darting like a cornered animal. His knuckles were bone white against the olive-drab sphere pressed into his palm. Cross leaned close, voice dripping contempt. "Don't choke, kid. Just throw the damn thing. Unless you want to be remembered as the idiot who took half his unit with him." The recruits laughed nervously, but their laughter was thin, fragile. Even they sensed the danger in the boy's trembling hands. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. Sweat poured down his temple, dripping onto the casing of the grenade. This is the point where leadership makes the difference. In every training ground, in every company, in every field team, fear has to be managed, not mocked. A soldier doesn't need a sneer in the moment before life or death. He needs steadiness, calm, guidance. I've seen leaders like Cross before, not just in uniform. They show up in offices, in classrooms, on factory floors. They confuse intimidation for authority. They believe breaking people makes them stronger, when in truth, it just makes them brittle. Under stress, brittle things shatter. And the ones who stand quietly, the Lockes of the world, they understand something deeper, that true leadership in a crisis doesn't shout. It steadies. The private's hands shook so violently the pin almost slipped before he pulled it free. Cross barked again. "Throw it already! Don't make us wait all day!" The boy jerked his arm back, but his grip failed. The grenade slipped. It hit the lip of the blast wall with a sharp metallic clink, a sound that cut through the air sharper than any gunshot. Time fractured. Second one. The grenade bounced, spoon flying free. The recruits' faces snapped wide with horror, every eye locked on the tumbling green sphere. Second two. Shouts erupted. Boots scrambled. Some soldiers dove for cover, others froze, their minds too slow to catch up with the catastrophe unfolding at their feet. Dust rose in chaotic clouds. Second three. Sergeant Cross, so loud seconds ago, went utterly mute. his face drained of color, his legs stiff as iron rods. The man who had mocked fear now stood paralyzed by it. Second 4. The grenade spun lazily in the dirt, arcing into the center of the pit, its fuse alive, counting down to the inevitable. In those suspended moments, the range became a theater of raw humanity. Fear had stripped every man bare. Some clung to instinct, some clung to hope. Others simply stopped moving, waiting for fate to claim them. But not everyone froze. Through the blur of motion and dust, one figure moved differently. Not frantically, not blindly. She surged forward, measured, calm, terrifyingly precise. It was Jenna Locke. While the rest of the base collapsed into chaos, her steps fell like the strokes of a metronome. Exact, deliberate. Her eyes locked on the grenade. Her hands prepared for what no one else dared even think of. And in that instant, the balance of the entire training ground shifted, from mockery to silence, from arrogance to awe, though none of them would understand why until much later. The routine had cracked. The moment had arrived. The grenade spun across the pit like a cruel coin toss, bouncing once, then twice, each metallic clink a countdown to oblivion. The world narrowed into 4 seconds, 4 impossible fragments of time that would decide everything. Second 1, recognition and panic. The instant the spoon snapped free, the recruits realized what had happened. Panic is contagious. It spreads faster than flame. Shouts ripped through the line, boots clawed at the dirt, helmets bobbed as soldiers either dove or froze. Some hit the ground instinctively, arms over their heads. Others stood paralyzed, pupils wide, mouths gaping. Even Sergeant Damon Cross, who had spent the morning mocking fear, was transfixed. His voice, so sharp minutes earlier, died in his throat. In that single second, his authority collapsed. Neuroscientists tell us that under stress, the brain's rational centers shut down. The amygdala seizes control, triggering fight, flight, or freeze. And here in the pit, freeze reigned supreme. Time dilated. Every heartbeat felt like a hammer on the ribs. Second 2, reflex over reason. Most people never think beyond the panic, but for a select few, training rewires instinct. Muscle memory becomes its own kind of intelligence. This is where Jenna Locke moved. While others recoiled, she advanced. Not recklessly, deliberately. Her body knew what to do before her conscious mind had caught up. Years of repetition, drills in places no one here could imagine, had carved pathways in her nerves. She surged forward, boots cutting through the dust. Her eyes never blinked, never strayed from the spinning green sphere. The chaos around her blurred into silence. What's remarkable in moments like this is not the absence of fear. Locke surely felt it, but the dominance of trained response over terror. Paramedics talk about it when they run toward gunfire to stop bleeding. Firefighters live it when they enter collapsing buildings. Pilots feel it when an engine flames out at altitude, and they calmly execute checklists. Training replaces panic with purpose. Second 3, the interception. The grenade struck the dirt, bouncing high enough to make the air itself shudder with tension. In that heartbeat, Jenna Locke's hand closed around it. It was not a desperate snatch, not a wild gamble. It was surgical. Her thumb found the spoon instantly, clamping it tight with a precision that seemed superhuman. Her grip locked, unyielding, as if she had seized time itself. Around her, soldiers screamed. Dust hung in the air like frozen smoke. Yet she stood in the eye of the storm, perfectly aligned with her purpose. This is the essence of composure under extreme stress. The ability to filter chaos and act on only what matters. Psychologists call it tunnel focus. In crises, some drown in noise. Others, like Locke, see only the thread that leads to survival. Second 4, restoration of silence. Her other hand swept down, plucking the discarded pin from the dirt. With steady fingers, she slid it back into its housing. The faint click it made was absurdly small, but in that moment, it was the loudest sound in the world. And then, silence. The grenade, now inert, rested in her palm like a stone. Her chest rose and fell in controlled rhythm. The pit, seconds ago an inferno of screams, became a cathedral of stunned quiet. Dozens of soldiers stared, their breath shallow, their eyes wide. Even Cross stood motionless, colorless, as if turned to stone. The only movement was Locke herself, calm, deliberate, still. What happened in those 4 seconds wasn't luck. It was the human brain at its outer limits. Studies show that under extreme stress, perception of time stretches. Moments feel longer because the brain records more frames of detail, forcing us to live in hyper-slow motion. That's what allowed Locke to track the grenade's arc, predict its landing, and move with flawless timing. Most people crumble under that load of sensory input. Their decision-making bottlenecks, paralysis sets in. But in Locke's case, the stress sharpened her. Training allowed her brain to channel the flood of information into action rather than panic. It's the same phenomenon seen in surgeons who steady their hands while a patient flatlines, or in airline captains who land disabled aircraft with hundreds of lives depending on them. Stress. If you strip away the uniforms, the rifles, the grenade, it's not so different from the moments civilians face. A mother performing CPR on her child until paramedics arrive. A stranger sprinting into traffic to pull someone clear of an oncoming car. A teacher locking down a classroom while danger prowls outside the door. These are also 4 seconds of forever. The gap between instinct and paralysis, between tragedy and survival, is filled by those who can hold their nerve. That's why Jenna Locke's act resonates beyond the military. It's not just about combat training. It's about the timeless truth that in every community, in every crisis, someone must step forward when everyone else steps back. When the dust finally settled in that training pit, every soldier knew what they had just witnessed. Not a miracle, not luck, but mastery. 4 seconds. That was all it took to dismantle arrogance, to silence doubt, to carve a legend. And yet Jenna Locke stood there without triumph, without boasting. To her, it was just another task completed, another duty fulfilled. For everyone else, it was the day they realized true strength doesn't shout. It acts. The silence after the click lingered like smoke. Every soldier's chest heaved, every eye glued to the figure at the center of the pit. Jenna Locke stood motionless, grenade in hand, calm as stone. Then came the sound of boots, heavy, measured. From the tower above, Colonel Marcus Hale descended, his face unreadable, his eyes locked on the young airman. He didn't look at the recruits. He didn't look at Sergeant Cross, who still stood pale and rigid, like a broken statue. His focus was entirely on her. He stopped a foot away, his voice cutting the silence. "Airman, hand me the ordnance." Jenna extended her hand. No tremor, no hesitation. Hale accepted the grenade, inspected the perfectly reseated pin, then turned his gaze toward Cross. "Sergeant," he said flatly, "get on the radio. Pull up her full service record. Read it aloud, now." Cross fumbled with his comms unit, his fingers clumsy, his voice hoarse. For a man who prided himself on command presence, humiliation clung to him like sweat. Still, he obeyed. Static hissed over the speaker before a trembling voice came through from the records office. "Service record, Airman First Class Jenna Locke," the clerk began, stumbling over the words. "Primary MOS, Explosive Ordnance Disposal Technician. Last assignment, 75th Ordnance Group, Task Force Sentinel. Decorations include," he paused, audibly swallowing, "the Bronze Star with Valor, Defense Meritorious Service Medal, and Joint Service Commendation with V device." Murmurs rippled through the recruits. A Bronze Star with Valor? For someone they thought was a supply runner? The clerk continued, each word striking harder than the last. "Special qualifications, advanced IED defeat, render safe procedures under direct fire, manual neutralization of unstable ordnance, high-threat EOD operations across active combat zones." Additional note, classified commendations redacted. Silence followed. The weight of her true identity crushed the pit heavier than any detonation could. Colonel Hale spoke again, his voice low, deliberate. "For those of you too green to understand what that means, let me spell it out. EOD, Explosive Ordnance Disposal. That's the job where you walk toward the thing everyone else is running from. You kneel over bombs designed to tear you apart, and you make them stop ticking, sometimes with nothing but your hands, a set of pliers, and courage. He held up the grenade Locke had just neutralized. You think this scared you? Imagine crouching in a market in Kandahar with civilians all around, while something far more unstable sits under your knees. That's what she's done. Repeatedly. He let the words sink in. The recruits, who minutes ago had laughed at her, now stared as if seeing her for the first time. To the outside world, bomb disposal is often dramatized. Hollywood loves the tension of the ticking clock. But the reality is harsher, quieter, lonelier. Most ordnance doesn't tick. It waits, buried under roads, hidden in toys, strapped to vests. An EOD technician's enemy is not just the device, it's time, terrain, weather, and the human fear that every cut wire might be their last. Statistics tell the story. EOD has one of the highest casualty rates of any specialty. Blast trauma, amputations, psychological scars from being inches away from death, day after day. And yet these men and women keep volunteering. Because someone has to. Because every safe bomb is a village saved, a convoy spared, a patrol that comes home. That's what made the revelation so staggering. A few minutes earlier, Jenna Locke had been just a clerk in their eyes, someone pushing a trolley. That was the image. The reality was something else entirely. A seasoned EOD warrior, a professional who had walked battlefields most of them had only read about in briefings. It's the same in civilian life. We think we know people by their job title, their clothing, the surface details. A janitor, a delivery driver, a quiet co-worker. Yet behind that facade may be someone who's carried burdens, fought invisible battles, or saved lives in silence. Image rarely tells the truth. Reality is often hidden until a crisis strips away the mask. The recruits shifted uncomfortably. They remembered their laughter, their mocking smiles. Those memories now burn like shame. Hale's voice drove it home. Respect is not earned by how loud you are. It's earned by what you can do when it matters. And none will forget what you just witnessed. This airman didn't flinch when death bounced at her feet. She did what most of you couldn't even imagine. He turned back to Locke. For the first time, his voice softened, tinged with respect. Your professionalism under pressure is a credit to the entire service, Airman. Thank you. Then Hale did something no one expected. He snapped to attention and delivered the sharpest salute of his career. And in that moment, the balance of power on the range inverted completely. Cross shrank into silence, his bluster raised. The recruits stood in awe, and Jenna Locke, still calm, still without expression, simply returned the salute before stepping back into place. The unmasking was complete. She was no longer invisible. She was undeniable. The range was never the same after that day. The story of Jenna Locke spread faster than rumor ever could, because everyone there had seen it. In 4 seconds, she had rewritten the silent hierarchy of the base. For Sergeant Damon Cross, the transformation was the hardest. The man who once strutted like he owned the pit now walked it with quieter steps. He no longer barked insults at recruits struggling with the basics. He still corrected, still demanded precision, but gone was the sneer, the mocking tone. He had stared into the abyss of his own failure. While he froze, Locke had acted. While his voice choked, her silence saved them all. It is one thing to be humbled by a superior officer. It is another to be humbled by someone you dismissed as beneath you. Weeks later, he found her alone in the ammo depot, counting crates with the same calm precision as always. He lingered awkwardly before speaking. I was wrong about you, about everything. You saved us all out there. I respect you. Locke didn't smile, didn't gloat. She simply met his eyes and said the only words he needed to hear. Keep your people safe. No sermon, no lecture, just a commandment distilled into 5 words. It stayed with him the rest of his career. In military culture, legends aren't voted into existence. They erupt. Recruits who hadn't even been present spoke of it in the chow hall, embellishing details until it sounded mythic. Some swore she plucked the grenade in midair. Others said time itself slowed for her. The truth was simpler, sharper. She had trained for chaos and met it with calm. That's why it resonated so deeply. She had proven that real strength is quiet, and real authority doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself in the worst moment imaginable. They began calling the blast pit Locke's Corner. New arrivals asked about it, and veterans of that day retold the story with the same reverence usually reserved for battlefield heroes. What struck me most wasn't just the act itself, but the aftermath. I've seen this shift before. You can lecture about respect, you can drill it into manuals, but nothing rewires people faster than witnessing a moment that flips their assumptions. I once watched a medic take control of a convoy ambush after the lieutenant froze. She wasn't supposed to lead, but she did. Afterward, no one ever questioned her authority again. It's the same here. Cross and his recruits had measured Locke by rank, by gender, by the job she was assigned. They assumed she was less. Then they saw her do the impossible. And in that silence after the click, they realized respect isn't about volume. It's about composure when everyone else loses theirs. The military runs on more than orders. It runs on stories. Legends like Locke's are passed down not just for inspiration, but as warnings. A warning against arrogance. A warning against underestimating the quiet. A warning against assuming you know who someone is by the patch they wear. For those recruits, the girl with the trolley became the one who caught the grenade. That shift in narrative changed the way they treated every support role that followed. And that's the power of stories. They outlast the moment, embedding themselves into the culture. Jenna Locke never sought the spotlight. After the incident, she kept moving with the same steady rhythm, pushing carts, inventorying crates, supporting missions. To her, what happened on the range wasn't extraordinary. It was just another day of doing her job. But for everyone else, it was unforgettable. She didn't just catch a grenade. She caught their arrogance mid-bounce, held it still, and diffused it in front of their eyes. From that day forward, no one saw her as just anything. She was a standard, a reminder, a living legend who needed no plaque or parade. In the end, the aftermath wasn't written in reports or medals. It was written in the way voices softened when they spoke her name, in the way Cross trained his recruits differently, in the way every soldier on that base remembered to look twice at the quiet ones in the background. Because the lesson of Jenna Locke was simple. Legends don't ask to be believed. They leave you no choice. The classroom was silent except for the faint buzz of the fluorescent lights. Rows of newly promoted sergeants sat upright, notebooks open, pens ready. They expected another lecture on regulations, another briefing about chain of command. Instead, Colonel Marcus Hale stood before them with a deactivated M67 grenade resting on the podium. He didn't shout. He didn't pace. His voice was quiet, deliberate, commanding attention not through volume, but through gravity. This, he said, holding up the green sphere, isn't just a grenade. It's a reminder that assumptions can kill you, and not just on the battlefield. The young NCOs leaned forward, sensing the weight of the moment. Hale continued. Years ago, on a training range, a recruit dropped one of these. Chaos erupted. Soldiers dove for cover. A sergeant froze. And then, a young airman, someone the rest had dismissed as a supply clerk, stepped forward. She caught the grenade mid-bounce. She reinserted the pin. And she saved them all. Murmurs whispered through the room. The colonel let them sit in the disbelief he had once felt himself. You know what's worse than an enemy's fire? Hale asked, eyes narrowing. The blind spots created by your own prejudice. They thought she was unimportant. They mocked her. And when the crisis came, she became the only one who acted. Their assumptions nearly got them killed. That is why I tell you now, judgment is your most dangerous enemy. He set the grenade down gently on the podium. Remember this story when you lead. Respect every soldier. Listen to the quiet ones, because you do not know what lives they've lived, what skills they carry, or what courage waits inside them. What Hale left unsaid, but every sergeant understood, was that this wasn't just a military lesson, it was human. In every workplace, in every family, in every corner of life, we underestimate people because of appearances, titles, or silence. And just as in that pit, those judgments can blind us to the very people who might save us when it matters most. Prejudice doesn't only wound, it kills. It kills trust, potential, and sometimes lives. The legend of Jenna Locke became a touchstone on that base. Not because she wanted it, but because others needed it. Her act turned into a parable whispered in chow halls and training rooms. that the quietest soldier may carry the strongest weapon of all, a calm mind. And Locke herself? She didn't linger to enjoy the respect she had earned. She moved on, reassigned to another post, another hotspot. No photograph on a wall, no plaque in a hall, just her boots carrying her steadily toward the next mission. The last anyone saw of her, she was walking down a dusty road at dawn, gear slung over one shoulder, the sun at her back. The wind carried her name for a moment, Jenna Locke, before it faded into the horizon, leaving only the lesson behind. Legends don't stay, they move forward, and their silence speaks longer than words ever could. The story of Jenna Locke isn't just about a grenade pit, or even the military. It's about life. In those 4 seconds, what mattered wasn't rank, title, or who had the loudest voice. What mattered was calm, steady courage when everyone else lost theirs. And if we're honest, that lesson applies to our lives today in America just as much as it did on that training ground. Think about it. How often do we underestimate people because of how they look, their job, their age, or even how quietly they carry themselves? Too many times, respect is only given to the ones who shout the loudest, when true strength is found in the ones who stay steady when life shakes apart. Maybe it's the nurse who doesn't brag, but saves lives every night. Maybe it's the grandparent who quietly holds the family together while others argue. Or maybe it's the coworker no one notices, until a crisis reveals they're the one holding the team together. The lesson is simple. Assumptions are dangerous, and respect must be earned by action, not appearance. That's something worth talking about, not just in the military, but in our schools, our workplaces, and our communities. So I want to ask you, have you ever seen someone underestimated only to prove everyone wrong when it mattered most? Or maybe, have you been that person yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your stories might inspire someone else who needs to hear it. Thank you for spending your time with this story. If it touched you, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who could use the reminder that true strength often wears a quiet face. Because sometimes the heroes we overlook are standing right beside us.